Dun da dun 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 da dun 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 dun. I got a 3D printer and it's awesome. This is the Ender 3 Pro. I got it. I'll show you how I put it together, and yeah, it's totally awesome. Here's everything that came in the box. The whole base is basically pre-assembled, which is great, and everything else was in a couple different layers. There was nothing damaged at all. These are the instructions that came with the printer. They're surprisingly very good instructions. The first step is to add the two upright rails to the base. A note on the packaging is they actually labeled the bolts with the sizes of the bolts, so you can figure out what goes where a lot easier. Going back to the rails, they're not both the same, so it's very important to lay them out so that when you attach them to the base, they're attached on the correct sides. Once that's figured out, this first step is super easy. You just bolt them to the bottom. Step number 2 was to attach the display screen and the power supply. A very important note here was that I had to make sure the voltage on the power supply was set correctly for the power supply in my region, which is 115 volts. After that, all I had to do was bolt both of these in place. Step number 3 was the Z-axis limit switch, which just bolted in place. Step number 4 was the Z-axis stepper motor and threaded rod. Again, a pretty easy bolt in. I left the sleeve on the rod for now though, since the rod was covered in grease. Step number 5 was to attach the filament feeder onto the X-axis horizontal bar. This bar did have an orientation that I needed to get correct, but other than that, it was another simple bolt together. The metal plates supporting the stepper motor have holes in them for fitting the Allen key through, which made tightening the bolts on this a lot easier. Step number 6 was to put the X-axis rollers with the extrudal extrudal. It's not a noodle, it's an extrudal. Step number 6 was to put the X-axis rollers with the extruder nozzle onto the bar and then bolt on the Y-axis rollers. Step number 7 was, surprise surprise, more bolting. In this case, to bolt the pulley/tensioner onto the end of the bar for the X-axis belt to ride on. Step number 8, the most difficult step in my opinion, was to add the X-axis belt. This was the only step that I needed to use a tool that they didn't supply in the box. I needed some needle nose pliers. Basically, the belt is held in place by slipping it through 2 notches in the extruder unit. The things crimped on the belt ends then keep it from being pulled through those notches. It took a while to wrangle the belt in, but once it was through and connected, it was all good. Step number 9 was putting the X-axis assembly onto the rest of the printer and tightening it against the threaded rod. Step number 10 was bolting on the top support and adding the end caps. This took a bit as I had to undo the vertical support bolts to be able to straighten everything and align it properly. I also took the opportunity to straighten the mounting of the power supply. A whole bunch of straightening and just loosening of old stuff, tightening it back up happened here, which was really useful. Also, don't put the end caps on yet because you're just going to take them right off again. Step number 11 was adding the filament spool holder to the top of the frame. This involved removing and then reinstalling the end caps to be able to slide the nuts through the frame rails. But once I did that, it was just another easy bolt together. I should also note that in order to slide the nuts along the frame rail, I needed to remove the bolts connecting the top rail to the vertical rail. So there was a lot of just undoing and redoing work I had just done in this step. Step number 12, the final assembly step, was to attach all of the wiring. All of it was labeled, so it was fairly easy, except for the connection to the screen, where the cable needed to be connected to the innermost slot, but it wasn't marked very well. Once all the wires were hooked up, I adjusted the X-axis pulleys to make sure they moved smoothly on the rail. After that adjustment, I then powered it up for the first time and was happy to see the screen turn on, and I did the auto homing sequence, and then I played with manually controlling all of the different axes. My second last setup step was to level the print bed. I did this by lowering the print head in each of the four corners and the center and adjusting the height until I could just pull a piece of paper out from underneath it. The final setup step was to insert the filament. First I connected the tube that's shown, then I cut an angle on the end of the filament to make it easier to insert. After that I tried putting it in, but that was too difficult, so I removed the roller that I'm showing, and then I just pushed it all the way through and reinstalled the roller.
Now that it's preheated, I should just need to push the filament through. I don't want to break it. Is there seriously not a, hey, feed your freaking filament through? There. Okay, so now, put this in. Got it inserted. Print from there. Let's print the dog. There is one dog. That turned out really good. You can kind of see all of the print lines, but overall, you can see the base. There's a little tail there. Top of his little head. Yeah. One doggy.